Welcome again, dear students. Myself, Dr. Kaleem Ahmed, Assistant Professor, Department of Wildlife Sciences, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Now, in today's lecture, we will discuss global goals for Biodiversity Plan 2050. As we already discussed from the day first, biodiversity is fundamental to human well-being. A healthy planet and the economic success for all peoples, including for living well in balance and in harmony with Mother Earth. We all depend on it for food, for medicine, for energy, clean air and water, security from the natural disasters, as well as the recreation and the cultural inspiration, and it supports all system on Earth. To ensure that by 2050 the shared visions of living in harmony with nature is fulfilled, the Global Biodiversity Framework (GBF) was developed to combat biodiversity loss and set the groundwork for global conservation efforts. So in today's lecture, we will cover the key goals, action plans and the visions of achieving harmony with nature by 2050 under the goals and visions for the same. Global Biodiversity Framework was actually established by the Convention on Biological Diversity at COP15 in 2022. It represents a unified global efforts to address biodiversity loss, promoting thus actually conservation and sustainable use, as it is of great significance for human well-being, ecosystem and sustainable development. It also outlines the world collective vision for halting and reversing biodiversity loss by 2050, ensuring that biodiversity is valued, conserved, restored and wisely used, maintaining ecosystem services, sustaining a healthy planet and delivering benefits essential for all the peoples living on this earth. The vision statement, we can say, is living in harmony with nature by 2050. The goal is to achieve a world where actually biodiversity is valued, protected and used sustainably. This vision of 2050 supports actually both environmental health and human well-being, ensuring the ecosystems continue to support services like clean air, water and climate regulations. So we can say achieving these visions requires a global collaborations and sustainable choices, and we can say conservation efforts are at every level. The four main goals of the framework are labeled in this slide as A to D. We can say ecosystem health and integrity, sustainable use of the biodiversity. Another is equitable benefit sharing, and the fourth one is implementation and the resources. Each goal actually address specific aspects of the biodiversity, ecosystem health and sustainable use, equitable benefit sharing and resource mobilizations. These goals actually lay the foundation for the action targets and the milestone guiding the biodiversity conservation efforts over the coming decades. We will examine each goal in detail in the coming slides. Let's start from the goal A, that is ecosystem health and integrity. The goal A is about halting actually biodiversity decline and restoring ecosystem to ensure ecosystem health and the integrity. The goal is, we can say, aspiring as it aims to conserve at least 30% of the world land, freshwater and the marine ecosystem by 2030, thereby making it crucial for preserving high biodiversity areas that are actually essential for ecological balance and resilience against the environmental challenge. Hence, we can say ecosystem health is crucial for services like climate regulation and water purifications, which directly impact human survival. The specific action under the goal A is actually preserving the species extinctions by protecting vulnerable species or threatened species and their habitats. We can say rebuilding population level for the species in decline and focusing on endangered and some of the ketone species that actually shape a particular ecosystem. The protection of the, we can say, the critical ecosystems also that actually play a key role in the climate regulation, like forest and wetland is therefore very crucial, and these actions are thus necessary, we can say, for reversing biodiversity loss and restoring ecosystem to the functional state. Another, the goal B, the goal B actually focuses on the sustainable use of the biodiversity so that to benefit both ecosystems and the human societies. Biodiversity actually provide resources such as food, medicine, and the materials that are very essential for the human life, but must be used with these things must be used with ecological limits to avoid their depletions. This goal actually promotes responsible use practices in sectors like agriculture, forestry, and fisheries. Hence, we can say it's all about creating a balance, some kind of the balance that allow ecosystems to regenerate while at the same time supporting the human needs. Some of the key targets for sustainable use includes we can say encouraging biodiversity, or we can say friendly practices in agriculture, forestry, as well as in the fisheries to reduce the environmental impacts. Another we can say we can do is advocating for responsible resource management, so that we can say the land and the water resources that are very crucial are conserved for the future generation also. Another thing that is highlighting the need to reduce our consumptions of the resources, especially we can say in high impact sectors, to preserve the natural resources which are actually depleting day by day. We can say these targets are thereby are very important in maintaining ecosystem health and in promoting the sustainable economic practices. Another is goal C. Actually, goal C is focused on equitable access to and sharing of the biodiversity resources. That is also very important thing. There must be an equitable access to all the resources, and that the resources which one can have, they must be shared. We can say fair benefit sharing, ensure that communities, especially those peoples which are indigenous and the local populations, receive the due benefits from the biodiversity resources in their regions. And this is very important point. Previously, the industrialists use all the resources of the indigenous peoples without giving them some kind of the due benefits, but this goes C is actually focus on that. Another we can say the goal also include the genetic resources which have immense potential in agriculture, medicine, and the biotechnology. Another we can say equitable benefit sharing, thus encourage the community stewardships and then promote the conservation by making local peoples actually partners in the biodiversity management and the biodiversity conservation. Some of the action that need to achieve the equitable benefit sharing include we need to develop a legal framework to ensure that the benefits derived from biodiversity are shared fairly with all the stakeholders. Another we can say is building institutional support to facilitate fair agreement and partnerships with different agencies, with the local communities, with the indigenous peoples. Another we can say is engaging indigenous and the local communities as critical partners in the conservation projects and the conservation management projects. We can say fair benefit sharing thus aligns with the biodiversity conservation, with social justice and the economic equity, thus building a sustainable approach to resource use in biodiversity sharing. Another is goal D. Goal D actually focus on securing resources and strengthening implementation mechanisms. This goal actually emphasizes the need for adequate funding as well as capacity building and technology for effective biodiversity management. It also marks the importance of the global corporations, as many countries actually face challenge in assessing the resource needed for the conservation and the management. So we can say without proper resource and international support, achieving biodiversity goals become highly challenging. Some of the key targets under goals includes, under goal D includes increased in financial support for biodiversity through public, private and international funding is one of the things that one can do. Another is development in knowledge sharing platforms. So to disseminate the best practices and conservation research. This is also very, very important. Another we can say is encouraging cross-sectors cooperations, engaging business, governments and the NGOs in the conservation is also crucial to achieve the target of Vision 2050. We can say partnerships and the collaborations play a very crucial role in bridging some kind of we can say financial and the technical gaps that are needed to complete the vision of 2050. We can say the 23 action targets are actually milestones to be achieved by 2030, designed to set the stage for long-term 2050 goals. These targets are actually provide some kind of the specific as well as measurable actions to track progress towards each of the 4 main goals or visions after 2050. The targets cover a wide range of the areas, from habitat conservations to pollution reductions. We can say achieving this target is very, very essential for building momentum towards the 2050 vision. These are the 23 targets. We will discuss few of the targets as example in the coming slides. So let's see what are these 23 targets. First is the first one is bring loss of areas with the high biodiversity importance close to zero, respect right of the people. The second is effective restorations for 30% of the areas and degraded ecosystems. The third is effective conservation and management for more than 30% of the areas. And the fourth one is stop human-induced species extinctions. And fifth one is safe, legal and sustainable use, sustainable harvesting and trade of the wildlife species. Sixth, we can say target is mitigate impacts of the invasive alien species, reduce introduction rates by more than 50%. And the seventh is reduce pollutions, risk harmful to the biodiversity and ecosystem services such as we can say pesticides, chemicals and the different plastics that people like to use. And the eighth targets of reducing threats to biodiversity is minimize climate change and ocean acidification impact on the biodiversity. Another 9 to 13 targets are meeting people's needs through sustainable use and the benefit sharing. And the ninth one includes sustainable use and the management of the wild species and the protection of customary rights of the peoples. The 10th target is sustainable management of the areas used for agriculture, aquaculture, fisheries and the forestry. The 11th one is restore, maintain and enhance nature's contributions to the peoples. And the 12th one is increased blue and green species, their equity and connectivity in urban areas and improve connection to natures. And the 13th target ensure fair and equitable shares of the benefits from genetic resources and digital sequence information. Another targets 14 to 23 that includes tools and the solutions for implementing and mainstreaming. The 14 targets include ensure full integration of biodiversity and its value into any decision making. The 15 includes reduce negative impact on biodiversity by business and finance and increase positive impacts. The 16 one includes encourage sustainable consumption. For example, half food waste, reduce our consumptions and waste. The 17 includes establish strengthen capacity for and implement biosafety measures. 18 includes reduce harmful incentives for biodiversity And 19 includes increase level of the financial resources for biodiversity, and 20 includes strengthen global scientific research, technology transfer and partnerships. 21 includes strengthen accessibility of the best available data, traditional knowledge, educations and the communications. And the 22 includes ensure full, equitable and gender responsive participation of marginalized groups in decision making. And the last 23 includes ensure gender equality in decision making. So these are the, we can say, 23 targets of GBF 2030, or we can say the global targets, 23 global targets. So let's discuss some of these in detail. These targets we can say, the first is target habitat conservations. The targets aims to conserve at least 30% of the land, freshwater and marine areas by 2030. This target actually prioritize areas rich in biodiversity, including forests, wetlands and coral reefs for the protection. We can say strategies includes expanding national park, establishing marine reserves and implementing wildlife corridors. And we can say habitat conservation is also crucial for preserving ecosystem and thus actually ultimately supporting the biodiversity. Another targets includes reducing pollutions. We can say the aim is to reduce the impact of the pollution on biodiversity by 50% by 2030. We can say pollution, especially from the plastic, chemicals and nutrients, affect both terrestrial and the aquatic ecosystems. Some of the strategies for achieving these goals include tighter regulations, promoting sustainable waste management and encouraging green technologies. We can also say that the pollution reductions is hence crucial for ecosystem health and species survival. Another we can say is restoring degraded ecosystems. The target aims to restoring at least 20% of degraded ecosystem by 2030. Restoring, we can say, degraded ecosystem strengthen resilience against climate change and help restore the biodiversity. The restoration of the land, forest, rivers, wetlands and coral reef is thus significantly important through reforestations, wetland conservations and coral reef recovery initiatives. Another is, we can say, climate change adaptations. The target aims to enhance ecosystem resilience to climate change, thus focusing on climate smart biodiversity policies. We can say the climate change affects actually biodiversity from altering habitats to affecting species migration patterns. We can say there are adaptive measures needed, such as creating climate resilient habitats, protecting climate sensitive species and investing more and more in resilient ecosystems, and the urgency of the building these measures to safeguard biodiversity thus call for successful achievement of these targets at 2030 of climate change adaptation. Another is monitoring and accountability. Monitoring and accountability is also very significant importance, we can say, in achieving the biodiversity framework goals. Tracking, we can say, and reporting progress on biodiversity goals actually helps or ensure transparency and the effectiveness of these targets. Tools like, we can say, remote sensing, data collection and biodiversity indicators actually help us in aiding the monitorings. We can say the regular reporting by the countries and organizations actually helps to evaluate the global progress and thus ultimately adjust the strategies as per the needs of the day. We can say the challenge and the global cooperation. The main challenge to implementing the biodiversity framework includes limited financial resources. We can say gaps in political commitment and technology access disparities. We can say to overcoming these challenges require active participations from the countries, organizations and the communities worldwide. We can say the international cooperation is needed to share resources, technology, and knowledge for the biodiversity conservation. Partnership between the governments, NGOs, and the private sectors are thus very, very crucial in meeting biodiversity targets. With this, dear students, we end today's lecture, and in the next lecture, we will continue to discuss some new topics.